Hello and welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we'll be discussing part 2 of Ancient Usage and Custom. Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com. Welcome back to the show. I'm David Colbeth, a past master with King Solomon Lodge number 60 in Auburn, Washington, and I'm joined tonight by our regular hosts, worshipful brother Jarrod Dunham of Penticton Lodge number 147 in British Columbia, and our original host, worshipful brother Steve Chung of Prince Charles Lodge number 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia. As I mentioned in the opener tonight, we'll be discussing part 2 of Ancient Usage and Custom from the Short Talk Bulletin, Volume 32, Number 4, written by Most Worshipful Brother Carl H. Claudy in April 1954. We'll have a link to that article and to the audio in the show notes. We encourage you to go and read or listen or both to that, and then come back, and then you can virtually debate with us. And while you're doing that, if you have time, we'd love to have your comments on the YouTube channel or on our Facebook page. All those links are in the show notes as well. So yeah, definitely please dig in and comment on the show, and we'd be happy to bring up those discussions if they become interesting, other than just accolades. So last show, we barely got down the list and didn't even get into our own lodge customs. We had a great debate on what landmarks are and what laws are versus customs. The next one on the list is the idea of solicitation, meaning like recruiting of members. And so is the idea of solicitation that it's unmasonic? And I have in my notes why. As long as he's coming of his own free will and accord, then what's wrong with that?
Well, is he coming on his own free will and accord? If he was asked, then it may not be on his own free will and accord. It may be that he has such respect for the person that asked him that he wouldn't think not to turn him down.
There's a certain point in our degree where he has to take a specific action, and he's even asked something similar to that. But I think, I don't think getting a petition is a secret, right? He got to get a petition to join lodge. And so isn't the act of asking for a petition, now if we stuff a petition in his face, then that may not be his own free will and accord. But if we require him to ask for a petition, isn't that his own free will and accord?
There's a big difference between solicitation and coercion.
I would agree. I would 100% agree with that.
I think that's the fine line that they were trying to not, by not allowing solicitation in the first place, is not, because there's a difference between someone saying, hey, I think you would enjoy this, and another person saying, hey, you need to join this.
Or if you want my order,
yeah,
you need to join this. Or if you want to be this, work for my company, or be elected.
Yeah. But once again, that's a custom because it's not in any of our rules.
I don't think it is specifically either, but I know it might, you know what? I need to look it up again, because I know I've read it or seen it somewhere that solicitation, and maybe it's just in other grand jurisdictions, that solicitation is absolutely outlawed.
Right.
I can't spell.
There is nothing. Solicitate.
No, I don't find it. At least the word solicitation. But I know there is a absolutely strong opinion in our jurisdiction by many guys. No recruiting, no solicitation. They have a very hard time with any kind of advertising or any kind of. It was a difficult deal.
Well, we've had that. Well, it's an age-old debate in our district, and of course, it'll continue to be that for a long time. But we do agree with advertising ourselves or statements, but someone still has to knock on the door of their own free will and accord, right? We don't agree that we should solicit or ask anybody to join, right? But putting it out there that, hey, we're here, and if you're interested, we'll be happy to speak with you, right? We'll advertise.
It's in there is a if you're I'm kind of a Short Talk Bulletin fanboy, and so I know there's a Short Talk Bulletin out there that talks about this very topic, and they go into pretty good detail on what solicitation is versus not. And it's interesting how as if by magic, as soon as the guy makes any movement towards interest, it's it doesn't have to be that I've been coming for 6 months or but it's almost just like, hey, what's that Freemasonry thing? As soon as she showed interest, the whole game is off about the idea of any kind of, you can absolutely bag and tag this guy, more or less. And it's just interesting how that attitude changes when one of our past grandmasters, Jim Mendoza, who we've had on the show, he talks about reclaiming the narrative. And I think that's an important thing we need to do as Masons, is to re-identify in the community who we are, that we're here still, that we're a viable thing. And so that, are we soliciting guys saying, hey, be a Freemason? The northern jurisdiction of Scottish Rite in the United States has this beafreemason.org. So isn't that solicitation, if you will? Come be a Freemason.
It's, I don't know. It's an extending an offer, but is extending an offer? Like I said, I've always viewed it as more they're against coercion than they are against just putting it out there that you are a Freemason and that someone else could be too. Because I know that when I was younger, in our jurisdiction, there was a lot of people had those 2B1 Ask One bumper stickers, and apparently that was a big brouhaha over whether or not even that should be allowed.
I've got the hat.
Yeah. So
to be one, ask one. I've got the hat.
But of course, you had to be able to decipher 2B1.
It's like a license plate. What? Yeah. What are you telling me to do, or what? Yeah, those are interesting. It was the old. I think we talked about it this weekend too at the Lodge Leadership Retreat, that you need to be proud to be a Mason, and so wearing regalia, wearing your lodge shirts, wearing the square and compass, a hat, whatever, like Steve was saying, having those things out there for us to show who we are and have people ask about it. I think that's important. And so I guess it depends on what you consider solicitation.
Right.
So number 6, when Carl Claudy wrote this, he had talked at pretty good length about the idea of race being an issue. And at the time, it was still an issue. And I don't think we're still we're a growing nation, a growing world. And so we're still trying to overcome biases. And that still could be an issue. Different cultures, different races, different things. But that could just be, I don't like the way he looks, Steve's got his hat on. So, I may not like, somebody may not like guys with glasses or guys with beards or guys with goatees or whatever. And so we have the own internal biases. And I think we as Masons need to use our tools and ideas to try to overcome those.
Well, that's the whole point of it, Freemasonry.
Isn't it?
It is. So, I can't speak because up here, it's a bit different.
Yeah.
We have a different history, not void of the same issues. There are still, but it's been less pronounced in our history.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. So I just put in my notes, No longer an issue. I didn't even really debate about it. But it was a pretty good chunk. So again, it was written in 1954, and so they were, at least in the United States, it was a embroiled time. Number 7, modernization of elements.
Those damn slideshows!
I laughed so hard.
It's like, how dare they put I almost felt like is it a magic lantern show?
In the article, he talks about how the idea of having slides, and so putting a candle behind a glassine thing to project something on the wall. Now, of course, we have modern slides and PowerPoint and all these kind of cool things that happen. It's interesting, though. I've noticed, I've been a Mason almost 14 years, and I've noticed we've kind of gone through this. We had our old click, the bulb came on, and the old round, like you go to somebody's house after dinner and they say, "Hey, look at our trip to California," and they click through their slides.
Oh, the cartridge,
yeah, the old cartridge slides. Yeah, we had one of those, and the guy would sit he had a book, he had a standard work and a little star in the book every time he's supposed to click the button. And we'd go through the slides, and that's how
slides of what?
Of our so we had pictures to as they were doing the lecture of the degrees. So he would have a slide to talk to. So there was a picture it would describe what he's talking about. A picture of King Solomon and the trees of Lebanon, or a picture of metallic objects, or a picture of different things that relate to the degree. And so it was kind of a touch point for him to remember what part of the lecture he's on, but also for the candidate to have that connection between audio and visual. And then we went to electronic slides, where it was more PowerPoint, fancy, updated graphics. And then, as if by magic, we've kind of come full circle, and now we leave the objects out, and we talk physically about the things that are in the lodge. We may go to certain places to develop that mnemonic memory, or in some of the degrees, there are some things that we use as part of the degrees, and we leave those out on display. Rather than having a slide to visualize, we visualize those things physically in the lodge room.
Right.
Do y'all use slides?
Never had a slideshow.
So it's just a guy standing up there.
We use the trestle board.
Okay, so you have like a canvas.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a canvas for that's applicable to each lecture.
Okay. Then there are some of those down here that still use that. I think those are cool. Some of them are really, really old.
Yeah, they are. And we've also got a really cool canvas that we use. We roll out on the floor, and it's about 6 feet wide by, I'm guessing, 15 long.
Yeah, for the second degree.
Yeah, for the second degree part of the lecture.
Yeah,
and it's pretty cool. It's a hand painted one.
Yeah. Ours. We were just commenting about that on our last second degree. It's probably time for a new one, or somebody get down there and touch it up. Ours is getting a little bit
But you see, it's customary in our lodge that we roll that out and walk our candidate through it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Some other lodges, it's customary in their lodge to use a PowerPoint presentation on the big screen on their wall, because they have that technology and they've embraced technology.
Our Grand Lodge actually published DVDs at one point. I was, it was before my time, and so when I found out about it, I thought, gosh, are they having problems getting lectures, or being able to deliver the lecture? Now, since we're talking about that, I was saying, at the worst case, you could read it, the lecture. I mean, you wouldn't want to, but the worst case, you could read it. And then I think maybe we talked about it in one of the shows, but I looked in our standard work, and it actually doesn't say that you can read it. It doesn't say you can't, but it doesn't say you can. And so it's a little bit silent in that area.
You can't.
Reading. No reading.
There's no question. You can't.
Thou shalt not read from the ritual book. Only one person in lodge is allowed to read the ritual book.
Who's that?
That's the director of ceremonies.
We don't have that. We don't have that.
Or the prompter. Usually it's the director of ceremonies who's the prompter anyway.
Yeah. So the other thing, I've always heard about it, but never seen it done. They talked about the in the ancient times they would draw out the lodge floor and then erase it or make it go away. I've heard of that in relation to like military lodges or other things that don't have a building, and so they want to, they'll go into a warehouse or go into a kind of a place where they can have their meeting, and they'll kind of draw it out or sketch it out or form a lodge and then make it go away at the end. But I'd heard that was part of some lodges in the ancient times, custom for some of the newer Masons to have to do that, or maybe the apprentices or fellowcraft as they're coming up, they would have to be the ones to draw out the lodge to teach them the lessons.
What was also for the fact that you didn't meet, as you said, it was because they didn't meet in purposely, like back at the beginning of the Grand Lodge era, before we started building lodge halls, and they would meet in whatever public rooms that were available. They would draw out the lodge, and then that would be the last thing at the end of the meeting would be, it might have been one of the apprentices. I thought it was one of the officers' job was to basically take a broom and sweep the chalk away.
Could be.
Yeah.
Well, what about the idea of a single vote to refuse a petitioner? Boy, there was a lot of detail on that. The idea that it's, none of us as humans are perfect, and so, but we give that power to refuse a man to a single person. Why not 2 or 3 or more guys should have to agree that this person isn't worthy of Masonry or whatever?
Once again, in our Constitution, it's 2.
But again, it's 2?
It's 2. It says 2 in our Constitution.
Really?
Yep.
Ours is a single vote.
You guys are mean, man.
Now what can magically happen is that somebody could stand and say, "Oh, Bushmaster, I think I may have incorrectly balloted," and then magically you have to do the ballot again.
No, actually, if my memory serves me correctly, because we've never gone through this situation, is that if there is, I think if it shows up with 1, we have to go through and reballot. But I think if it shows up with 2, that's it. Like, the ballot is no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And
that's why as senior deacon, whenever I'm preparing the ballot box, there's only ever 1 in there anyway. I wouldn't do that.
I had read the balloting section. It talked about how the wardens are actually supposed to count the number of votes to make sure it correlates to the number of Master Masons in the room. And so one of my I didn't do it the first time, but the next time I was reading the code and I saw it and I go, oh, so then the next time we had a ballot, I opened the box and I was taking my time and kind of counting, because I had counted how many guys were there, and then put it back. And then the past master sat next to me and he goes, "Did you not know what to do?" I said, "No, I was counting the number of ballots." And so it's interesting. Today I was delivering a class into our Lodge Leadership Retreat called Leads Are for Closers. It's a class I developed on how to handle leads and new inquiries into Masonry. And one of the guys said, well, we were talking about the process. We use the 6 steps, of course, just like you, and we stole it from you anyway. And so the 6 steps has really, in my opinion, has really kind of revolutionized the entry process into Masonry. And he was talking about, well, what about the investigation and the balloting procedure? Isn't that really supposed to stop guys from coming in too? I said, well, honestly, to me, it's a formality at this point. If a guy makes it through the 6 steps and he gets a petition, he probably will just, he should just slide through investigation and balloting. It really shouldn't be a question at that point.
Well, not really.
No, actually, Stephen? Or is that all you wanted to say?
No.
I was going to say, no, because the problem that you have with the 6 steps is that it's still a very small group of the lodge that has met your candidate.
Oh, not in our case.
Holy crap.
He comes to dinners, he comes to social nights,
Well, yeah, but that's not the entire lodge.
Yeah.
And there's still the balloting is there for that guy who doesn't necessarily go to anything but the lodge meeting,
I suppose.
So it's checks and balances, but you're right. It's theoretically the 6 steps of initiation, like the 6th step is there to weed out anyone that, is seriously not a good candidate for Freemasonry.
And when you really think about it, the importance of the investigation is more to know that the partner or family is supportive. Because if he doesn't have a supportive partner or family, it could be a challenging journey and one that may not be recommended, and so we use that opportunity to answer all of the questions of the family members and the partners, and because we don't always get that opportunity during the 6-step program.
I always disagree with that section.
Which section?
The going to their spouse or partner and actually getting them involved, and whether they have their approval to join Freemasonry. I can, in my case, I had, let's see, no, hold on, I had just gotten married when I did my investigation committee, and so we had, and Karen she was a past honor queen of Job's daughter, so she knew about Freemasonry, but she was actually a little bit incensed that this organization was asking her permission to allow me to do something. And I'm like, because she's not involved, she never wants to be involved.
Whoa! I never said anything about asking her permission.
But you did say if it was okay with her.
No, I did not.
I had her support.
Support's different. I think support's
different.
I don't have her support. I have her acceptance, but she doesn't support my decision to be a Freemason. Ooh. But she also doesn't oppose it either.
Well, in my opinion, non-opposition is support, because she's not. When you get home at night, she's not saying, "Why aren't you? Why are you away so much?" or "Why are you spending so much time?" a lot, whatever. I mean,
I know, but
I shouldn't say she. Could who know? You're.
What are you saying?
But or it could be family. I mean, what if you're still, anybody? I'll be honest. I don't think my mom listens to the show. so when I first joined, she said, "What is that going to replace your church?" And if you have somebody that's not supportive of you in your hope to and support, again, I think support could just mean simply keeping their mouth shut, not being negative and not dragging you down. If you come home at night and you're getting nagged on by whoever, your spouse or other person, or
okay, but here's to go off a totally tangent. Conversely, is that not my job to worry about, not yours as a lodge?
Yes and no. Our job is to be concerned about bringing you through this journey, and I'll tell you, I got one crabby wife. I don't need to deal with another one.
Okay.
Right? Well, like
this is. If you go to
anti-masonry, that could be a problem.
But if Karen were totally anti-masonry and I were in a healthy and loving relationship, I would take her opposition to it to account and possibly not do it.
There you go.
That's what I'm saying, is that it's not your job to decide whether my relationship is strong enough for me to join Freemasonry. It's just whether I'm a good person to be a Freemason.
And I would say that by the time you get through the 6-step process, you probably have talked to your partner about this enough that you have figured out whether it's right or not, and they have figured out whether it's right or not. And so by the time they get to investigation, even during investigation, if you have somebody that has a bad day and or the conversation doesn't go well, the investigation is probably not going to be unfavorable. It's probably still going to go on and be favorable. So again, in my opinion, the investigation and even balloting has kind of become a formality, because it's probably going to be a favorable, because the guys that are plugged in and involved in going to suppers, and they're going to have a favorable investigation.
Whoa. We guard our west gate, and we have said after an investigation, it may not be advisable for us to continue with this candidate.
Even after 6 steps?
Yep.
What happened at 6 steps then? How did he get through 6? How did he get through 6 steps and get a petition and then the investigation reveal something?
Told the guys everything he thought they wanted him to know.
So what was revealed in the investigation that you didn't reveal during 6 steps that you can maybe say on the air to the world? Just us three, just us girls here.
through the investigation, it was revealed that he belonged to a certain organization that we chose not to have involved in ours.
Okay. Because maybe that's a question that's in the investigation that wasn't asked as part of the 6 steps process.
Well,
Isn't it magic how there's questions and things we ask and discuss in 6 steps? There's questions on the petition that are different, and then there's even more questions that are different in the investigation. Why aren't all those questions asked up front?
but actually, it wasn't even a question that was asked. It was an observation of things at his home.
Okay.
Right. And so
it brought up discussion.
Yes.
Because you were there.
Yes.
Okay. That's fair.
Right. Photographs and things like that, right? So, but
no.
No, but and so we have actually said no after, and it had actually nothing to do with the partner.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a pretty powerful thing, at least in our jurisdiction, a single vote now, or even 2 votes. I guess that's important. You have to have. So I guess it would be if we had cast a negative, most likely somebody's going to stand up and say, "Oops," and so we're going to have a second vote. So it'd have to be a very positive vote to not accept a guy. Now, I don't think am I revealing anything that it's cubes versus marble? There's rounds and squares.
And triangles and octagons and
do you have those? No, you only just have 2, right?
Yeah, we have just actually. I've only ever seen marbles.
Just rounds.
Yeah.
You don't have cubes. So our blacks are cubes.
We have cubes.
To differentiate between the light and dark cubes.
So you don't accept, yeah.
Because there's some pretty dark round in there even.
I was waiting until the end, but I guess just got to ask this one because this falls under specific lodge customs.
Okay.
How do you vote?
Oh, that's a great question. I didn't know there was a way, but I had a very I didn't mean to jump into you. I had a very good mentor, and when the voting was happening, he leaned over to me and said, "There is no rule, but generally vote with the left hand. You put the right hand over your heart, bow, and vote with your left hand."
Well, okay, here's the thing. Up here, tradition is you vote with the right hand.
Oh.
With your naked right hand.
Except Headley Lodge, and because we always had to say this, whenever we had a vote, we always had to tell everyone how to vote, because we would have visitors look at us funny because we vote that way. We vote with the left hand, or we voted with the left hand.
Well, and I don't know. Absolutely, that's a total custom. But how do you vote for bills and things in lodge? When a master says
Poorly.
What's this, poorly?
It's by sign of hand.
Which one? Just any hand? Just a raised hand?
I'm right-handed. I always raise my right hand.
And see, in the vote by the regular sign of a Mason in Washington, it's a left hand.
Well, that's because more than likely, a lot of times you have to be careful when you're voting with your right hand that you don't do it at the wrong angle.
Our belief was that our first Grand Master was left-handed.
Oh, okay.
And that's why it became left-handed. But who knows? And that's absolutely custom. I don't know. It says left hand in there, but why was it the left hand?
Oh.
It's in our Constitution that way.
Oh, ours doesn't mention. We just vote by sign of hand.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess I shouldn't. I don't have to look it up. It says vote by the regular sign of a Mason. I don't know that it's, and for whatever reason, we vote with the left hand.
No, but usually the regular sign of a Mason is. Oh, I can't.
Oh yeah, it does say left hand
okay.
in our Constitution. Boy, we didn't get very far. I think we can squeeze in one more. The idea of use of the sword, wearing a sword or things in lodge, and that was an interesting part too.
Right, because those are not intimidating weapons. I play with swords for fun, and those are not intimidating.
Not anymore.
Well, no. Do you guys have? They're like little they're big letter openers, basically.
Oh no, ours are a full-on 3-foot sword.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I've got to come to your lodge. You sound like you guys have fun.
You don't have a 3-foot sword for your Tyler or your inner guard? Our Tyler has a 3-foot sword, right? And it's got a point, or I mean, our inner guard has a 3-foot sword
It might
with
be
a
bigger.
nice little point. And our Tyler has a 4-foot sword with a bigger handle, a bigger blade on it,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, they're full on weapons.
Well, they're sticks because they're not sharp.
No, well, depends on your opinion of that,
Well,
right?
actually, it's interesting because Smoking
If
Lodge.
you fell on that, point, it would still pierce your body,
Oh yeah, if you fell on
and
them. But I know that Smoking Lodge in Princeton has a saber that they use.
Does your Grand Lodge have a Grand Sword Bearer?
Yes.
Yeah, ours does too. And that our Grand Sword is like 4.5 feet tall. It's a monster.
Yeah. But although it was interesting, up here it wouldn't happen. Going into Lodge armed. I remember a few years ago there was a debate from south of the border about whether or not people with carry and conceal permits should be allowed to.
Yep.
Right.
And the interesting thing was that a lot of the guys that carried concealed knew that their custom was to lock up their weapon in the secretary's office or whatever. And I thought, well, if there's no rule, why are you creating a rule for yourself? I mean, concealed carry is exactly that. It's concealed. Nobody's supposed to know that you have it.
Right.
But it was interesting when I was reading this article. I mean, they didn't have that idea of small concealed handguns at the time, and so the sword was the weapon of choice necessarily at the time, and so that was the weapon, and so but you would relinquish your weapon before entering a lodge.
Are you talking about the early Grand Lodge period?
Yeah.
It's not that so much. It was a sign of your status as a gentleman.
Yeah.
How big your sword was?
No, carrying a sword.
Yeah.
Oh.
But then you would relinquish it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, did I guys ever tell you about my sword story when I drove down the highway with the sword to go into lodge?
Oh yeah, on your motorcycle.
Yeah,
you were on your motorcycle.
Yeah.
You had it strapped to the back.
Yeah. That was a good one.
Sticking out the back of your jacket.
Yeah.
I think we're kind of coming to the end of the segment here, and so hopefully you'll join us for part 3 at least. Hopefully we'll get through this in the next part here. On behalf of Jarrod and Stephen and myself, thank you for joining the Working Tools podcast. See you next time.